The Knights Templar, a holy order, God's personal militia. A society so secret that its true purpose is debated to this day. First glorified.
They would have been on a spiritual path.
And then accused.
Blasphemy, sodomy, and devil worship.
Just who were the Knights Templar? Heretics? A brotherhood of treasure hunters? Or, as books like the Da Vinci Code suggest, the keepers of sacred knowledge? The Knights themselves left many clues, passed down from generation to generation, hidden in ancient manuscripts and scratched into the stone walls of their prisons. Secrets waiting to be deciphered by those adept enough to crack the Templar Code. It has been nearly 1,000 years since the first battles were fought in what the Muslim East called Al-Hurub al-Salibiyya, and the Christian West called the Crusades, the Wars of the Cross. For 200 years, blood was spilled in the name of God. Lines were drawn, alliances formed, and enemies made that endure to this day. Out of the bloodshed came legends of heroes, martyrs, and sacred relics, including the Spear of Destiny and the Holy Grail. The most mysterious and enduring legend concerns the Knights Templar. Though what has emerged may be an amalgam of both fact and fiction, one thing is certain: few rose to such powerful heights or fell so quickly and so far. It was during the Crusades that the story of the Knights Templar began. In 1095, major power blocks clashed in the Mediterranean and along Europe's borders. The Roman Catholic Church in the west, and in the east the Orthodox Christians and the Islamic Turks and Arabs.
Christian kings were very aware that this new religion was encroaching on their territories. So there was a political aspect as well, that the Western powers wanted to keep their kingdoms intact.
From the beginning, the West had two goals: to block what was seen as an Islamic incursion into Christian realms and to take back Jerusalem. The Holy City had been controlled by Muslims since the 7th century, first by the Arabs and then by the Turks.
It was partially psychological, and the religious aspect of getting Jerusalem back into Christian hands. But there was also the threat of, as I say, the Seljuk Turks coming into Europe. So it was basically a preemptive strike against the Arab world. The repercussions were enormous, and it permanently changed relationship between Islam and Christianity.
On the 27th of November, 1095, Pope Urban II summoned a council of clergy to Clermont in France. His speech was later written down in several versions, but its main thrust was unequivocal. Christians everywhere were to rise up against the Muslims in the Holy Land. One account included the call to let those who have been robbers now become knights.
It was the First Crusade, which left Europe in 1096, was known as a Passagium Generale, which meant general passage. And that essentially meant anybody could go, whether they were a professional soldier, a knight, or just local common riffraff.
The Western Catholic Church offered powerful incentives to join the battle: indulgences. As a result, the early Crusaders were an especially ruthless band.
You would get what was essentially a get-out-of-jail-free card, which would absolve you of your debts, it would remove your crimes.
And a lot of people on the First Crusade were actually criminals. They were rapists, murderers, thieves. And they knew if they went on the crusade, got to Jerusalem, that was it, their slate would be wiped clean.
Thousands responded to the call and took up the sword. What followed was 3 years of slaughter. The Western Christians were united with their Byzantine brothers in the East. The Turks, Persians, and Arabs, with their history of infighting, soon lost ground. In 1099, the Crusaders captured the ultimate prize, the Holy City itself.
When the Christians captured Jerusalem, there was a bloodbath. And knights were wading knee-deep in, the horses were knee-deep in blood. And they slaughtered everybody, Muslim, Jew, Christian, without mercy.
With Jerusalem firmly in Christian hands, Western pilgrims began traveling east in record numbers.
People particularly wanted to see sites like Bethlehem. They wanted to see where Christ had undergone his crucifixion.
But such visits were far from safe, no matter who officially controlled the city.
What they hadn't counted on was most of the Crusaders, once Jerusalem had fallen, went home. So they had nobody to protect the city. Once you got outside of the city walls of Jerusalem, it was a bit of a wilderness. Really lawless and dangerous place, and just saying that robbers behind every bush, essentially.
It was at this point, around the year 1119, that the first Knights Templar came forward. Their founder was Hugh de Payen, a wealthy nobleman from the Champagne region of France. A veteran of the First Crusade, with a reputation for both piety and bravery, de Payen offered to recruit 9 members of his family to protect Christian travelers visiting the Holy Land.
The original purpose of the Knights Templars was to protect people travelling from the coast of the Mediterranean to the Holy Land.
So the idea was that you have these knights, professional soldiers, living as monks and protecting the roads, patrolling the roads.
This was the long-accepted story of how the Knights Templar came into existence. But today, that account is being questioned by scholars and historians.
The first written evidence of their founding was 70 years after it took place, so some of that may not be completely accurate.
9 rather elderly and middle-aged knights were hardly in a position to protect very much in the Holy Land.
Was the safety of travelers really their primary concern? In truth, what drew the Templars to the east? Ancient secrets, or rumors of treasure and hidden mystical powers?
They burrowed down for over 90 meters, straight down through solid rock. They knew precisely where to dig. Where did that information come from?
Of all the mysteries that surround the Knights Templar, the most baffling concerns their early years in the Holy Land.
The Templars went to Jerusalem somewhere around 1118, 1119, and then for 8 or 9 years completely disappeared from the scene. They were not heard from during this time.
They presented themselves to King Baldwin II, the King of Jerusalem at the time, and they were given what we might call today 5-star accommodation on the southeastern platform of the Temple Mount.
The Templars made their headquarters on what is thought to be the site of the biblical Temple of Solomon. Erected in the 1st millennium BC and said to be covered with pure gold, it was built to house the Ark of the Covenant, the 10 Commandments, and the secrets of King Solomon. Although the original temple was destroyed by the Babylonians in 586 BC, later holy structures were built and rebuilt on the site, including the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and the Dome of the Rock.
It's a sacred area to Jews because that's where Abraham was about to sacrifice Isaac in the book of Genesis. It's obviously sacred to Christians because that's where Christ was crucified. And it's sacred to Muslims because that's where the Prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven. So you've got the 3 great religions all vying for the same spot, basically.